Good morning, everybody. Monday. It's the first Monday of October. That has to be something exciting. And we're really looking forward to the third of our series of 6 sessions that we're talking about fair trade. And we're not just talking about fair trade globally, because that's something that we've been talking about for almost 30 years, actually. But these series of sessions are really looking at how can we grow fair trade in the domestic markets of the global South, with a focus on on Kenya and also on South Africa. And I'm really excited about today's discussions because whenever we talk about fairness, especially in supply chains, the question always comes up about what does that mean in terms of the product at the end of it. Does that mean it's going to be more expensive than what we call quote unquote conventional trade? Or is it going to be around the same amount of money? And are people conscious and willing to look out for that particular product that is standing by those fair trade values? And those fair trade values we talked about in our first session. There's 10 principles, and we even had an online winner of an Undugu Society product because they were able to give us about maybe 8 out of the 10 fair trade principles. And those range everything from just making sure that there's fair treatment of the people who are working in those sectors and supply chains, making sure that the environment is looked after, that there's no child labor, that children are just allowed to be themselves, but that we also have inclusive workplaces. So these are some of the principles that are there of fair trade. But also one that's really important is that one of cooperation, that people work together, that they are accountable to each other, that they're transparent. And that transparency discussion will continue a bit today, and we'll talk with, we have the pleasure of having Rain Morgan from Turkle Trading in South Africa. And we also have Fuhisa from the acronym of it is Krakode, right? But it stands for Cultural Crafts Consultants and Design Company, and they're from Tanzania. And Fuhia will be joining us in just a little bit, and we'll hear from her. But I also, and of course, we have my co-host, Musa Mpofu from WFTO South Africa. Yes, I'm calling her my co-host because guess what? Today we have like an all-women's panel. There's so many of those all-men panels. It's refreshing to have like an all-women's panel. And that's what we have today. But don't forget, fair trade is about inclusivity. So we were going to have Bernard Ota, who is the regional director of WFTO. But unfortunately, I think he gave his voice away over the weekend and he can't join us today. But I think we're still going to have a fantastic session. And thank you to all of you who have joined us this morning. Please go ahead and put your comments on the live chat. Let us know what you're thinking. You can ask us any questions. And don't forget that in our second session, where we had all these different fair trade organizations on the panel with us, including we had one from South Africa. We had one from Kenya as well, and they, we had a fantastic discussion about the different products. We had a young farmer from South Africa, and we had a fantastic session talking about sustainability. And we also challenged you to send us your pictures and tag us with you holding a fair trade product, and that could be any member of the fair trade movement, right? It could be WFTO, it could be Fair Trade International, it could be any of these other sustainability labels that really look into making sure that we have sustainable production and also responsible consumption, so that these things are reflected not just in fair trade principles, but it's really great to see that these are being reflected in the SDGs, and that they've also been something that a lot of us have been talking about, especially with COVID-19 and the fact that everything has slowed down just a bit, right? And we keep talking about building back better. So, what better way to build back than along fair trade principles? So, I'm really happy about today's discussion. I'm going to start with you, Rain, and ask you to please tell us a little bit about Turkle trading, when it started, how come you decided you're going to go this fair trade route, what has that meant for you and your business. So tell us a little bit about that. And look at me, I've just realized I've come to the end of it and I didn't even say my name. I'm Makeshi Gitatu Kiriga, and I'm a senior consultant with Kijani Group. We're based out in Nairobi, and we're just all about fair trade, global supply chains, and how to make trade better. So, Rain, over to you. Let's hear about Turkle.
Hi, Wangechi. I beg your pardon. I hope my mic is on because I can't actually see if I'm live, but I'm sure someone will send me a hand signal if I'm not. Okay. The potted version of Turkle, the first question everyone always asks us is, what does the name Turkle mean? Nothing. Mm-hmm. We had to choose a name. We were in a desperate situation. Peter said his favorite color is turquoise and mine's purple. So we threw them together and we said we can always change the name later. And 25 years later, we still haven't changed it. So there we go.
It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so Turkle. But in any case, so both Peter and myself come from a background of what in those days were called alternative trade. My first sort of encounter with what we would call development economics was I was doing an internship with Soweto Candles in Soweto in 1976, which is an insanely long time ago. And from there on, we've basically spent our entire lives in fair trade and alternative trade and stuff like that. And not only working towards, for us, the notion of a funder-dependent alternative trade organization or a fair trade organization or a sustainability organization is something that we actively worked against. When we started Turkle, our main aim was sustainability, financially, environmentally, in every possible way that we could make sustainability work. And that does not necessarily mean huge profits. It just simply means sustainable, right? Yeah. Okay, so that is a little bit about Turkle. In the South African business landscape, Turkle is a completely unique entity. Everyone says, what the hell are you guys doing? We get that comment more often than anything else because one of a very tiny company, we're 5 people. And about 10 years ago, actually it's longer, it's about 12 years ago, we decided that we don't have money to contribute to the fair trade movement. But what we can do is contribute 25% of our management time to help the fair trade movement in some way or another. Yes. And that for a tiny company is a hell of an ask because it means that for the other 75% of the time, you have to work like an absolute donkey to make up for the 25% of time that you're spending on the fair trade business. But having said that, it is possibly one of the best learning curves that we could never have paid money to a university to get the experiences, to learn the things that we've learned, to meet the people that we've met. And I can honestly say that for us, our global network is worth its weight in gold. Every single minute of time that we have spent on WFTO work has been paid back in terms of connections, in terms of friendships, in terms of trade connections, whatever. And literally, we can now say that we trade globally, literally. 95% of our production is export. We have a tiny, tiny, tiny local market. But that's another story. So, because we haven't really put a serious effort into the local market.
Right. And what are your thoughts around the growth of the local market? Do you see it having some potential for some of these products that you have?
Yeah, we do. But the fair trade conversation in South Africa is a very difficult conversation. our population as a general, as a whole, is very much driven by price before value. People always ask, what's the price first? The only people who are worse than the South Africans are the British. They are terrible.
And yet it's the biggest fair trade market globally.
I know.
You know that?
I know. I mean, yes. Go figure.
But it's also a conversation that's been taking place there for the last 30 plus years, right?
That's
and
right.
So for South Africa, or the global South, as we like to call all these new markets, it's a very new conversation. Very new conversation.
It is a very new conversation. But the point about the whole thing is that, and people always say, somebody should do something about it. And for me, the answer to that is really very simple. That each one of us, every single one of us, if you are economically active, you are spending money.
Correct.
Right? We have a choice. We have a choice whether we buy for value or whether we buy for price. Right? And this especially goes to, I was listening to a really interesting podcast earlier in last week about the fashion revolution people.
Yes.
Where they were speaking about how the person who sews a Louis Vuitton handbag, I'm sure Louis Vuitton's not listening, so they might sue us, but it doesn't matter because it's not untrue. The person who sews a Primark handbag, right, which is a cheap chain store in the UK. The person who sews the Primark handbag and the person who sews the Louis Vuitton handbag, that incidentally sells for more than I earn in a year, gets exactly the same amount of money.
Imagine that.
You understand what I'm saying? So somewhere along that line of those designer labels, someone is making a hell of a profit. And it is not the people who are sewing the handbag. And us as consumers, we have a choice. We walk into a shop, we're either going to save 4,000 euros to buy a thing, a designer item, or we will say it's not worth it because it's not for me. It's not so much about the money. It's about what does it represent. Do I want to look at this handbag every single time and think, right? The person who sewed this handbag didn't even get a living wage. And for me, that is where our responsibility as consumers sit.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, because, Musa had alluded to that in our first session. Musa, can you hear me?
Musa's got her hand.
Yes. I was saying, can I just jump in saying that how then, I mean, the question, I love what we're talking about here, but the question is, how then do we get the consumer to have that change in mindset? The consumer to feel that it's not really about carrying the Gucci handbag, but it's about carrying a handbag that I know when I paid the money I paid, I improved someone's life, I contributed to someone's life. How do we get the mindset to change?
That is $1 million question. But the only way I can think of is that when people buy fair trade products and they will say, that I've bought this fair trade product, I'm wearing it, I'm using it, I've given it away as a gift. And I as a consumer, have chosen. I have chosen where I spend my money. Look, I'll be totally honest with you. When I go to the supermarket and I buy baked beans, I buy the cheapest baked beans I can find, if that is what I particularly want on that day. And there are certain places where you can chase for price, but there are certain choices that you have to make. Whenever we speak to people, to members here in South Africa about living wages and the importance of living wages, I always say to them, you guys in the factory are the first people to campaign for living wages.
Absolutely.
And not just living wages, fair wages, okay? But how do you put this together with going to PEP stores and buying a pair of shoes or even worse, buying a little baby T-shirt for 17.99 Rand, right? Which is it is so little, it is ridiculous. You can't even buy the fabric in South Africa for $17.99. Knowing that the person who made that little baby t-shirt got paid next to nothing. It's not the same story as a can of baked beans that came out of a factory. Because a garment, somebody sits down and sews that garment. And it is a choice that you make. And one doesn't want to shame people into it. You just want to say, just stop and ask. I really need that Gucci handbag?
The other, you raise a really good point, Rain, when it comes to talking about, first of all, consumer choice. I think that Musa talked about this in our first session when she said that as consumers, we have the power to actually push businesses to do things a certain way. Because if you have that collective power, then you can bring about change. So that would be one, which also goes to the question that she just asked now. How do we raise that level of awareness so that people can start to, stop and think, like you've just said, Rain? The other thing that we talked about was, how can we be our brother's keeper in the sense of the choices that we're making. And again, it goes back to, all these different products that are available. Also, how do we know the one that has been, that is produced fairly, right?
Yes.
And maybe that's something that you can touch on a little bit, Rain. How will we know? How will consumers know that, this pack of rooibos tea, the farmers have been paid well, or this particular candle, the artisans have been paid well? How do we know?
Now, I don't know if you can see this, but you look for, there.
There you go.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Ah, there we go. Can you see it? Because it's back. It's probably back to front, isn't it?
Yes, now we can see.
You look for that on your product. Then you know that we have checked, WFTO have checked that we do what we say we were going to do. And you can be sure that the whole reputation of WFTO stands behind this single product. The lighting's terrible. But in any case, there we go. So that is the one easy way of doing it. And the next way is just to simply use logic. I mean, if something is too good to be true, it usually is. And if something is too cheap to be true, that is also a flag. And if something is too expensive to be true, that is also a huge red flag. If something is too expensive, you can bet your bottom dollar that the way the price was determined was an equation that was thought up in a business school that said for a product to be truly aspirational, right, it has to be above a certain threshold.
Right.
And that tolerance threshold shifts all the time. It is the most famous. It's the most famous case study that you learn in business school. Is the story of how De Beers turned diamonds into from a product that was essentially only used in industrial applications to something that every girl wants on her finger. And the price that you pay, if you walk into Cartier in London, the price that you pay for that diamond has no relation to what miner actually came out of the ground. Absolutely. Yeah. And the price build-up is exponential, but not just from a point of view of being a little curve like this. It actually does that. That if you had to graph it, the price build-up, there's literally a meter of paper exactly. And that story, it's a choice. We have to choose. Do we do that or don't we do that?
The other question that I used to work with fair trade for a number of years, and I had the honor of sitting on the FTO board in Brussels when the Fair Trade Charter was being redone. And that was an interesting exercise, of course, because it took a while to get input from all the different stakeholders. But the impetus for the rewriting or the relaunching of this charter was also quite interesting as well, because it was because of how misused the word fair trade was. It ended up being associated with a more protectionist type of trade, global trade approach, instead of what it was supposed to be, which was a people-centered type of trade that did look at the triple bottom line in a really honest manner, and making sure that it wasn't just, the people who were at the center of it, but then, yes, trade needed to go on, right? So there needed to be a level of profitability in order for the business to be sustainable, but then also the environment, the third P, which is the planet, needed to, of course, continue to be taken care of. So you have all of these different dynamics, and it's also quite curious to hear, when everyone is talking about rebuilding back better. And I keep saying, there's already a model. All you have to do is just adopt fair trade, right?
Yes.
And all of you, as all these different businesses, if you're building back better, that's what it's about. It's about that spread that you talked of, Rain, where it's this exponential, curve that just goes like that, right? And saying, let's look at everybody along the supply chain, because there is room to be both profitable and pay a decent wage. There is room to be profitable and pay a living wage. There is room to be profitable and pay, and have fair and decent working conditions. I was listening to Winnie Byanyima. She's now the head of UNAIDS, and she was the head of Oxfam International for quite a few years. And when she was at Oxfam, she was at the Davos conference, famously quoted at the Davos conference last year in 2019, when she was giving the example of women in the garment sector, the one you've just talked about, where you're not given any breaks. You're expected to work these 8 to 12 hours, and it was so bad because you not only have the time factor, you have it then. There's some formula that's connected to how many pieces that you're making. So women were literally wearing diapers so that they don't go to the toilet. And then at the face of it, a big company comes and they're in this export processing zone, and they're talking about, we've created, 4,000 jobs. But what quality of jobs have we created, right? And it goes back to what you've said. It begs the question: if it's too good to be true, there's a problem. If it's too cheap to be true, there's a problem.
And too expensive.
And if it's too expensive, there's a problem. There's somebody somewhere who's not getting what's fair to them. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to say one more thing. If I could repurpose fair trade today, given the 45 years that I've spent doing the thing wrong.
Yeah.
if I could repurpose it today, I would take great care not to create this exclusive club of exclusionist fair traders, right? And rather focus on the consumer's obligation to choose the right thing. Or not obligation, but the consumer's choice to choose the right thing. And to say that when you choose for a fair trade label, even the Fair Trade International label or the WFTO label, you're making a choice with your money, right?
Right.
But we've unfortunately created what I call fair trade, which is like fair trade where the trade is big and the fair is little, okay? And fair trade where the fair is huge and the trade is little. And the people who talk about fair trade and the people who are actually trading fair trade, right? There's a sort of an uneasy, I don't know what it is, an alliance between them, because we need each other, but we actually live on different planets. And that is the connection that we've got to make. We've got to remake that connection and we've got to bring the consumer into this.
So hold that thought, Rain, because we're going to hold on one second, Musa. Hold that thought, Rain, because
we've got Fuia.
Part of this conversation is about how are we going to make fair trade work for the global South markets. So there is an opportunity for this rejigging, right? But before we go into that, Musa, hold your thought so that I can also invite Fuhia. Karibu sana Fuhia. I'm so pleased to have you here with us. I think that's your phone. Please put it on vibrate because we're in the studio. Fuhia, tafadhali naomba tuzime simu na tuiweke kwa vibrate. I don't know what vibrate is in Kiswahili. Oops.
Maybe I can just express.
So yes, go ahead.
While she's finding her feet. I think you're right, Rain. I think there needs to. This thing is systematic like all other things. And I think there needs to be a change in the system. For us to get some ground, we need to get to a place where when consumers think I'm going to shop, they are not thinking about the price more than they're thinking about the value. So I feel like it needs to be a re-socialization. I mean, the socialization of price in the global South is a real one. Maybe it's because maybe of our economic status and stuff like that. But I feel like even though the economics of the global South or South Africa, whatever, is not so great, we need to still value the products that are on the shelf and start to think to ourselves that if I'm trying to create sustainable employment, or I'm trying to ensure that my brother or whoever remains employed, then I need to buy products that are sustainably made, that are locally made and stuff like that. We need to begin to put the value on it. We need to think past the price. And it's a challenge. Like you said, it's $1 million question. We don't know how to do it. But I feel like if we start to have such conversations in our circles, because that's where everything begins, ideologies begin in circles. So if within our circles, we start to challenge ourselves to not really, I know it's a weird thing to say, not to really think about the price, but to put the value on it, on the product above the price, and to think I'm buying fair, which means I'm making impact. And well, let me pay the additional extra, if there is an additional extra, because that's another thing. Sometimes buying fair is not particularly buying expensive. That's another thing we need to start to talk about as well, that just because you're buying fair trade doesn't mean that you're buying exorbitantly expensive prices. Try and understand what goes into the price. How does the price come into what it is? And then you have a better appreciation of why you are paying the price that you're paying. So I feel like, yes, definitely the onus is on us as fair trade entities or sustainable entities to educate the consumer, but also conversation within our groups shift to a more, guys, can we be more, put more thought into our purchasing pattern?
And we see that because right now I think we have a comment from Basma Barham. I hope that I've said your name right. And Basma is saying that we should tag people who are interested in this kind of cooperation, because there are people who are looking for an ethical market, but also it's a way to introduce your products to people who are looking for, I guess we tend to call it social justice through trade, right? Target people who are looking for human rights and they will be a long-term customer. And even with this pandemic, people who are just making trade are suffering, but partners who are looking for fair trade are committed. So absolutely, it's correct. And Basma is from Palestine. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's great to hear from you. We have Margaret Jerimbai from Nairobi, Karen. Thank you for joining us this morning and and listening in. Please go ahead and ask your questions. Continue with your comments. It's always really good to hear from everybody. So, Fuhia, karibu sana. I'm so pleased that you're able to join us. Please tell us a little bit more about Krakode and a bit about yourself. We know that you're calling in from our neighbor, Tanzania. Please go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself and about Krakode. But also, you can give us the full name of Krakode, because I do know that that is an acronym. Karibu Fuhia, the floor is all yours. Uh-oh. Fuhia, unatusikia? I don't know. I think I'm going to turn it back to the studio. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe if we can see if we can sort that out and then see how we can bring her back on board. Yeah, connectivity is a challenge. I'm not even at home today because of connectivity. So to all of us, to all the power suppliers out there, let me talk for the Kenyan one, which I know, by the way, it's all our energy is, our electricity is sustainably produced. We have hydropower and we have geothermal power, and that's all we have, which is great. But I don't know what's going on today. We've been having issues over the weekend, but it's possible because that's large-scale sustainable production, and large-scale sustainable production can happen when you have a collective of very many products and very many producers coming together to supply to all these many consumers that are out there. But I would like to pick up on something that Musa just said before we sort of change that, which was, how do we, and I mean, and it goes also, it alludes to Rain's comment, how do we get that that dance between the producers, the traders, and the consumers to be one where we're not stepping on each other's feet, but we're able to, to glide nicely. And even if it's a Jerusalema, that we're doing it in unison and with some coordination.
Please don't.
Musa, go ahead, please tell us how do you think we can rejig this? Because, to be honest, especially when we're looking at the domestic fair trade market, it's a new conversation, right? Which is also part of the reason why we're having these discussions and why we're having this series. So it's also a chance for us, especially those who have been within this fair trade movement for a long time, to think of how things can be done differently, because we are in a different market, we are in a different space and time. And how can we make that work?
I think, like all social matters, to try to make an impact, you need to start talking about these things in your circles. I mean, and question people in the decisions that they make. A lot of times, we overlook the impact that we have in the social circles that we're in, because sometimes maybe we're scared to say what we want to say, or we think maybe it won't be as greatly accepted as it should be. But I mean, if you look at issues like gender-based violence, whatever, once you start to challenge your friend to say, can you stop what you're doing because it's not right? You've done something. They're going to think differently. So if in our social circles we can say, but why are you buying that Gucci bag? What do you get? I'm so sorry for using Gucci, but why are you buying that ... bag? Do you feel that you are making an impact by buying that bag? Like, what value do you get out of carrying that bag? And start to question people's decision making or purchasing patterns. When you go shopping with your friends as girls, ask, but why particularly that one? Did you check the label? And also just start to make them aware of little things. Did you check the label? Where was it made? Don't you want to promote something that was made locally? Or don't you want to promote something that was made fairly? Or, make them think about it. Then slowly but surely, when they go shopping with their other friends, then they start to talk about it as well. So it feels small, it feels insignificant, but it's something. So there's our social circles that we can use. Also, when we network, I mean, if you're in an organization, a big organization, and you have access to the purchasing or whatever, challenge them as well. Why are we choosing as an organization to promote cheap? Why are we not promoting sustainable? Why are we not promoting fair? So it's in the areas of influence that we have. If you go to a religious organization, it's the same thing, because you still purchase, you still buy. Ask them as well. Why are we choosing to make this decision and not this one? We are brothers keepers. We should be able to promote fairness, sustainability. Why are we not? Why do we look at the cheapest product and choose to buy that one?
Well, so that's a question. Go ahead. Sorry, Musa. Sorry for interrupting.
I was just rounding up that I think it's in the small things that we do that we're able to make an impact. Sometimes an impact is not about reaching a large pool of people. We can reach a large pool of people through the small groups that we are in and make an impact, make them see things differently, choose things differently, and then we're getting somewhere, we're making some progress.
So you're challenging all of us to be that pebble in the pond, right? The one that starts with that small wave and then the ripples just keep going and going and going. I have a comment here from Nancy Moretti, who says, but on the converse, if someone is resource constrained, why not Primark? So I'm going to throw that one to you, Rain. If someone is resource constrained, can they still buy fair? Can they still buy something that is, does fair trade mean expensive?
Okay, as a person who's worked for a lot less than I would have earned in the private sector for most of my life, and having raised children through that stage where they literally grew out of stuff every 5 minutes, and if they didn't grow out of it, they wrecked it. I must be honest, I also spent a fair amount of my money on the Primarks and the Pep stores and places like that. But sometimes you have to make those decisions. But as long as you know that I am making this decision based purely on price, but I will make it up somewhere else. So in other words, I will pay that extra for fair trade coffee, or I will pay that extra for fair trade tea, or I will buy that fair trade bag. That is we're human. We're living in a very imperfect world. But as long as you're consciously making that choice, and it's about being conscious of your choices. It doesn't mean that you will if you're on a diet trying to lose weight, it doesn't help to say I will never eat sugar again.
Right.
Okay. You have to manage your sugar. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, I had a wonderful experience with my one niece. It's actually not a niece, it's my niece's little daughter.
Yes.
This little kid grows up in a situation that, I mean, this kid has got tech. She has an iPhone 11 and she's 7.
Oh dear.
But don't ask. More money than sense. But in any case, so 2 years ago when she was 5, and she had an iPhone 5, we went to Thailand to the conference there, and I bought her a monkey, a knitted monkey from Ceylon. The famous Ceylon monkeys. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, now I'm bringing this knitted monkey back to this child here in South Africa who's got absolutely everything. And you know what? She still sleeps with that monkey. Yeah. She loves that monkey. She carries that monkey absolutely everywhere. It sleeps with her. It is now 2 years later. It's been through the washing machine 1,000 times, and it still looks as good as new, right? But she knows. She will go onto the internet and she will look up the Ceylon website and she will show people this monkey was made by people, real people, not in a baked bean factory, not by a machine. So there is hope for the kids. You know, I always look at it like this, and I think to myself, just when there's like no hope whatsoever, we go shopping with the grandsons and they will say, don't buy this product, the packaging is not recyclable.
See?
Don't buy that product, it is not eco-friendly. If you buy that face wash, it's got microbeads in it. Don't buy microbeads because microbeads are choking the fish. We will rather pay a little bit extra for biodegradable packaging, right? And so we're starting the fair trade conversation. Yesterday, again, they had chocolate. One of the chocolates was a fair trade chocolate that is probably 60 years past its sell-by date because we brought it back from London last time we were there. Wow. But guys, don't worry about it. They don't care about sell-by dates, by the way. And it's fine, they're still alive, I checked. But they consciously could choose a fair trade chocolate.
Yes.
And that is, to me, is the encouraging thing, you know, that
yes.
they are, and as Musa says, we must never underestimate our influence in our own spheres of influence. If you buy your sister a fair trade handbag for a present, you say to her, I have bought you a fair trade handbag and this is where it came from, and that is why I chose to buy you a fair trade handbag rather than a whatever the brand is. Or if you say to your, here in South Africa, we've got a clothing chain that very famously, the moment the COVID-19 restrictions hit, the first thing they did is they cancelled all the orders in the pipeline with Bangladesh.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Thousands of people literally lost their work overnight. And because this is a huge clothing chain. I will never, ever set my foot in that clothing store if it's the last pair of panties in Cape Town. I will phone Musa. Wow. You know what I'm saying? I will wait till I'm out of the country to buy, but I will never buy another thing from that company ever again. And that is how I can't say it on the air, but I will say to my friends, and I will tell it to my children, and I will tell it to anybody who stands still long enough to listen. And those are the choices that we can make. But the best way I find of spreading the word is to give gifts.
Right.
Absolutely. You know, like we do gift packs for corporates. You know,
yes.
It's not the huge stuff. It's it's small gifts, and we mostly do it for people like attorneys and people like architects or physiotherapists or doctors or people who want to give just a little thank you at the end of the year. But then we make a huge splash of adding a paper in a sort of a message, not only from the company to say why they have chosen to buy a fair trade gift, but we also tell them this is fair trade and this is why it's fair trade and that is what it means, and that in our particular context it means that practically 2.5% of the buy-in price of this product goes directly to an educational trust that puts children in school, and Musa can tell you how important school is in South Africa.
Absolutely.
And it's getting more and more important every single year as our education system has basically fallen over. I don't know about what things are like in Joburg, but I can tell you one thing: in Cape Town, it is tragic. But I guess that's a story for a totally different day. Have we still not managed to get Ria back?
No. I think that unfortunately, Fuhia hasn't been able to come back in. I'm not sure what's happening with her network there, which is unfortunate. But we'll make sure that we go ahead and tag Krakode on our ticker. Those of you who are joining us now, we're talking about fairness in supply chains and what that means in terms of the price. But really, we're talking about challenging all of us to make these conscious decisions whenever we're out there shopping for something, and just being aware that cheap can be very expensive. I mean, look at the conversation that's going on right now. I mean, we're back in the clothing industry. not just in terms of how much water is required to produce cotton, but also the fact that, you have these very, very trendy clothes that people throw away after a while. I mean, I know in my wardrobe, I've got some stuff that's like, 15 years old, because it wasn't necessarily something that you bought because it was so trendy, but you get something that will last you a long time, and you may spend a little bit more on it, but they'll last you forever. And maybe that's some of that payoff that you were talking about, Rain, that you look and say, okay, if I spend a little bit extra here, what does that mean for the long term? But also, what does that mean for, just even for the environment around me? What does it mean for the supply chain that this is being sourced from? And we have a comment here from Margaret Vai, who says, fair trade, ethical business, and genuine products in the market are real issues during these times when everyone is selling online. And if we could talk a little bit about that, Musa, do we have members of WFTO who are selling online? What is that looking like for them right now? Is it something that they're highlighting, whether they're doing it on their Instagram or WhatsApp pages, or whether they're doing it on their own websites? Are they talking about the fact that they're fair trade on these different platforms? What's been their experience? What sort of feedback have you been getting?
I think slowly but surely everyone's journeying towards it. There are some people who are definitely there, who have been there before COVID, and have the shop set up. They have the Facebook, the Instagram, the works. But I mean, it's a real. COVID was real. It had an impact on everyone, and it still does have an impact on everyone. And so slowly but surely, we've been working mainly with those organizations that are not particularly online, to have them at least have a platform on the WFTO.com or the WFTO Africa and Middle East website, where they can at least showcase their products while they build their own website online, on Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, I mean, a significant number of our members do have online shops. Rain has an Turkle Trading, not Rain, Turkle Trading as an online shop, but it's mainly South Africa. So that's going to be your turkle.co.za. Oh, there we go. It is. It's on the ticker.
Yes.
But yeah. I mean, we have Rain Africa. They also have online shops. We have
Frederica also has one.
Yes, Top Quality. They have an online shop. So, I mean, if you go onto our website, you'll have a look at those who are on there. And they do have online shops. Where they don't, they might have a Facebook page where they're able to share their stuff. Where they don't, they might have an Instagram page. But slowly but surely, we are getting there where, I mean, everyone recognizes the significance and the importance of having an online presence in this day and age. It's paramount to being able to do business in pandemics and stuff like that. So we've all definitely learned, and we see the value in it. And so, yeah, we're journeying towards it. We're journeying towards everyone having a platform.
There you go. There you go. And I like what you said about the fact that WFTO is offering this platform for its members. Let it be the place where they sort of come in and get their feet wet when it comes to online trading. And also for the consumers to know that there's a place where they can collectively just, they can go in and be able to find, ethically produced and sourced products from across the continent in one particular platform. And I think that's quite powerful. But I do like what Rain said about, just being conscious, and then that one of the ways in which you can spread that message is in the gifts that you choose to give. Everybody loves getting a gift, whether it's even just a free mint, when you're leaving the restaurant. Everybody likes to get something. And now that we're getting into this whole, last quarter, and for a year that's been as crazy as this year has been, I think it's even more important to keep with those connections and to focus on those relationships, because really that's what the gift baskets are about. And then as people are putting these together, that they can be conscious of what it is that they're putting out there. Let's look for that fair trade product. Let's look for that, for this particular wine that is providing decent wages. And you can find that out because it's going to have the fair trade mark on it. It's putting children through school, as you mentioned, Rain, because they've said, like in the case of Turkle, that this is something that we're doing to support the community. And you can find all of these out there if you know what to look for. And Rain, you've already shown us the WFTO mark. There's a fair trade mark. There's, Forest Stewardship Council. There's a Marine Stewardship Council. There are all these different labels. But I really wish that part of the conversation could truly push towards getting, making what started off being called alternative trade, right? Which we're now calling fair trade, that could be mainstreamed. That just becomes the way that business is done, right? So that if we can all collectively work towards that, whether it's how we're lobbying in the different spaces that we're in, or whether it's in looking at how we can cooperate with other like-minded people to push and to bring about this change, I think that would be truly building back better. And just trying to see how we can reset how trade is currently being done. I see Trading for Development has joined us this morning. Karibu Tena, welcome once again. You were with us last week on Friday. It's good to see you there. It's always encouraging when we have people who have joined us a couple of times and are continuing to do that. Unfortunately, Fuhia from Krakoda in Tanzania was unable to join us. Technical issues, and I guess these are also some of the challenges of being live. But maybe we can go ahead and just put on the ticker some of the information about them, although, of course, you can find their information on the WFTO website, which is www.wfto-org. Africa.org, but there's also the Krakoda website over there. So please take a look at what they have and what they're making in Tanzania. They've got some beautiful handicrafts. And I hear Trading for Development has mentioned that they're wearing their Kazuri necklace. Fantastic. This is from the Fair Trade shop here in Kenya. There's one that's done by, there's a group called Bombolulu, and they are in partnership with the Association for the Disabled in Kenya, and they have a shop in Nairobi that's called the Fair Trade Shop. And those of you who are in Kenya, it's right off of Waiyaki Way and a stone's throw from the iconic Safaricom. And in there, you can get all sorts of handicrafts that are done. We have Undugu shops, and they have been working a long time with families who have street kids, because they send their children out there because they can't afford to have them at home, so they send them out to beg or whatever. But through Undugu, they're able to have really dignified livelihoods where they come in and they use their traditional knowledge and know-how to create crafts, whether it's baskets or sculptures. And these are sold in Undugu shops. And there's one in a suburb of Nairobi called Karen. So check it out. And we'll always keep tagging these different shops who have been with us on the ticker. So please make sure that that you look out for them and support them, because they're truly doing great work within the community. But more importantly, they're putting out fantastic products out there. So that if you are looking at, like for like, you're going to get a real quality product, but knowing that when you're spending that money there, that it's actually making a difference, because the artisans are going to get paid well. And Rain wants to jump in and tell us something about that. So go ahead, Rain, tell us.
I think that Trading for Development just gave us a super idea. I mean, how about...
Did I miss that? Where is it?
Hey?
There's a bit where they talked about wearing their necklace.
Yes. What we need to do is we need little TikTok videos. I'm wearing my kazuri necklace. I'm sleeping under my blanket.
Miss, I'm not on social media talking about TikTok. I love it.
I've got grandchildren. No, but you know what I mean? There's a super idea. I'm wearing my necklace. I'm wearing my blanket. I'm using this product or that product or whatever.
Yes.
Thank goodness, I've got a huge collection of stuff.
In fact, that was one of the challenges that we put out there, which was, show us your fair trade stuff. Take pictures, tag us, and show us your fair trade stuff. And the person who's going to have the most of these by the time we're done with our 6 sessions, which is ending next week on Monday, somebody's going to get a prize. So Basma, send us your pictures from Palestine, trading for development. Show us all this Kazuri and Bombolulu stuff that you've got at home. Go ahead and tag us. You can tag us on all these different platforms, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Show us you enjoying your fair trade stuff. Right? Whether it's that cup of coffee, but we want to see the tea packet, the coffee packet. If it's your tea, show us your little tea bag. If you've got your ceramic cups from all these different traders, show us that. If you've got some of those beautiful candles that we were talking about last week, show us. Take a picture, tag us. And you could get another thing to add to your current collection.
Yes. Oh, great.
So we've got we've just got a few minutes to go. And before we wrap up, I want to hear your parting shot, Musa. So you give us your parting shot, and then Rain will give us her parting shot. And we'll remind everybody to go out there and continue to choose fair. So go ahead, Musa. Tell us your parting shot for today.
Okay, well, I will just reiterate. I think we just need we're our brother's keepers. Let us choose to see the value in the products that we buy over and above the price of the products that we're buying. Be your brother's keeper. Ensure your brother has a job. Ensure you're equipping your own country's economy. Buy fair is the right thing to do. I feel
Absolutely. There you go. Hashtag buy fair. It's the right thing to do. Okay, Rain, give us your parting shot.
Right. I've got 2 things to say. The
Please
first
do.
thing is that I know that there's a lot of discussion in the fair trade. There was a lot of discussion in the fair trade community about the fair trade charter and all sorts of stuff like that. But the one thing as consumers that we have to realize is that while there's lots of fair trade marks out there, there is a huge body of people called the conscience economy who are really working very hard to do the right thing in whatever sphere they are in. Not one organization gets absolutely everything right. So whether you've got a forestry stewardship council story or a sassy story or a froggy, what's that, rainbow, the coffee jobby, that little froggy? Yeah.
Yes, the Rainforest Alliance.
Yes,
yes.
It's that. But in any case, so there's a whole host of these labels out there. And sometimes just choose a label. It doesn't actually matter because they're all part of the conscience economy and they're doing good somewhere.
Absolutely.
And then I had listened to a super interesting podcast by a guy called Simon Sinek, who wrote Yes. And he wrote something about the theory of why. Why do you do what you do? But he has a podcast that's called A Dash of Optimism. And a couple of weeks ago, his thing was that the thing that people buy now is stuff that make them feel good. And what better reason or what better motivator to make you feel good is to buy something that is already doing good.
Fantastic.
And that's it. That's me out. That's me out for the day.
Oh, this is time for like a mic drop, Rain. Brilliant. I like that. I've had so much fun today. And, thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation. Trading for Development is asking us to do a webinar with Oxford, the Fair Trade Coalition, WFTO Africa. I think that that's a fantastic thing. I'm going to throw that back to you, Musa. You can make this happen. We're all ready to do this. But I really like what you said, Rain, about, if you're going to be doing purchases that are going to make you feel a little bit better, especially when you are sort of holed up in quasi lockdown or whatever it is we're going through, if why not do something that you know is already doing good? Why not spread that good feeling that you're going to get to all the people who are involved in producing that product by doing what you've mentioned, which is buy something that's already doing good. And how will you know that? Because it's going to have all of these different labels that are tagged on there to let you know that this is not just a product that's there to provide you with great tasting coffee or tea or wine or chocolate. This is something that is has been consciously and ethically produced and sourced. So thank you so much, Rain. Everybody, please look out for Turkle Trading. The ticker is there at the bottom. Please see what amazing products they have on there. Also check out all these other products that we have been talking about. We mentioned Krakode from Tanzania. There was Ndugu Shops. There's Kazuri Beats. There's Machakos Coffee Union. There are all these other products that are also available on the WFTO Africa website. Please tag us with your consciously bought products that have been ethically sourced and produced. And how will you know that? Because there are all these different labels that are out there that are part and parcel of the conscious economy. So please support your fellow producers. Buy local as much as you can, as Musa mentioned. But more importantly, look out for people-centered products that are available in shops worldwide, but especially if you can buy that locally at home, it's part and parcel of this conversation that we're having now. So let's choose fair trade, let's choose fair, and have a great week. Please tune in on Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock East African time. And we're going to continue with this conversation. Thank you so much to my guests today, Rain, and my co-host Musa. And have a lovely start of the week and the rest of the week. And let's see you again on Wednesday. Don't forget to tag us with your fair trade things, right? On all of our social media sites. See you on Wednesday. Thanks. We're going to play a video when we're leaving.
My name is Sami Makau. I'm in charge of sales and marketing here at Kazuri Beats. Started by a lady by the name Lady Wood way back in 1975. She started with 2 single mothers. Within a very short time, she realized that there were many more ladies who were in great need of employment. And therefore, she started bringing in more and more ladies. And there was the start of Kazuri. The main objective of this project was to assist women. You know, women are the backbones of all the families. We were sure that once we assisted the women, we are assisting many more behind the scene. Any purchase of the Kazuri products that you make goes a long way to assist these disadvantaged ladies of the community.
My name is Wycliffe Mutuku.
Shadrack Alzeki.
My name is Josephat Ngenja.
John Mutua.
Jacinta Nduku. Kwa majina naitwa Hana Mwaka.
Josephat Zeki.
Monica Mudeu.
My name is Ruth and I choose fair trade.
I've choose fair trade.
I 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 choose fair trade.